Hello everyone. Today's video content. There are nights of motherhood without tears, only emptiness. Introduction. The night is very quiet, but inside it's not. The night falls very gently. No more car noises outside, no more baby crying. The room is dark enough for everything to settle down. You sit there, maybe on the edge of the bed, maybe on the sofa, and for the first time that day, no one needs you to do anything. You don't cry, no feeling of sadness wells up. Just emptiness. A very strange emptiness. Not painful, not noisy, not causing panic. It just lies there, silently, as if something inside you has just withdrawn without warning. You still breathe. You still open your eyes. You still know you have to get up early tomorrow. But the feeling of, I am here, fades away. There are nights of motherhood like that. It wasn't a night of tears, but a night of silence that stretched too long. During the day, you fulfilled all your roles. You still took care of your children. You still answered messages. You still nodded when someone asked, "Are you okay?" And you believed you were okay. Until night came, all movement stopped, and you realized there was nothing left inside to feel. If you're experiencing nights like that, know that you're not strange. You're not emotionless. And you're not the only one who has ever sat in the darkness, not crying, just silently feeling empty. This video begins from those very quiet nights, where pain has no cries, but still needs to be heard. Not crying doesn't mean you're okay. We're used to believing that tears are a sign of pain. When someone cries, we know they're sad. When they sob, we know they're overwhelmed. But what's rarely said is, there are pains that don't come with tears. And motherhood is one of the places where such pains often appear. Not crying sometimes simply means there are no more tears left to cry. After childbirth, a woman's body has to relearn how to survive. Prolonged sleep deprivation, hormonal changes, new responsibilities with no respite. In that whirlwind, emotions are gradually relegated to a secondary position. You no longer have time to truly be sad. You only have time to keep going. And then, one day, you realize you don't cry when you're tired. You don't cry when you're hurt. You don't even cry when you feel like you're disappearing. Everything happens so smoothly, it's frightening. You're still taking care of your child. You still complete the housework. You still answer every question in a calm voice. But inside, there is no movement. Around you, people look on and think you're fine. Because you don't complain. You don't break down. You don't worry anyone. In a society that judges mental health by superficial appearances, silence is often misinterpreted as stability. But the truth is, emotions don't disappear, they're just repressed. When a postpartum woman stops crying, it's very likely because she's been withdrawn for too long. Every time she thinks about speaking out, she thinks, oh, it's probably not serious. Every time she feels tired, she reminds herself, every mother goes through this. And so, emotions are suppressed, layer upon layer, until her body and mind choose to shut off some of their feelings in order to survive. Emptiness isn't apathy, it's a form of deep exhaustion. There are mornings when you wake up and don't hate the new day, but you don't look forward to it either. There are moments when your child laughs and you know you should be happy, but that feeling doesn't quite reach you. Not because you don't love your child, but because you've run out of energy to fully experience it. The danger of this state isn't its intensity, but its quietness. It doesn't make you cry for help. It makes you keep going, until you forget that you have the right to be okay. Many women only realize they're exhausted when they look back and see a long period where they lived as a shadow of themselves. Neither happy nor sad, neither angry nor hopeful, just playing their role. If you're there, stop here for a moment. Not to diagnose, not to label, just to recognize. Not crying doesn't mean you're okay. It could just mean you've been trying too hard for too long without a break. And the fact that you realize this, even if only in silence, is a very important step. Where does emptiness come from? Emptiness doesn't appear suddenly. It doesn't come overnight. It builds very slowly, day after day as you try to fulfill every role, while your own self is gradually relegated to the backseat. Most postpartum women don't enter this state of emptiness because of one major event, but because they gradually lose themselves. Before becoming a mother, you were a person with a rhythm, thoughts, and things that made you feel like you. After childbirth, everything revolves around the needs of another life. That's natural. But what's unnatural is when this transition happens without any buffer for you to adapt. You wake up to the sound of your baby crying, not because you feel ready. You eat when you have time, sleep when you can, think about yourself when everything else is done. Your body may be recovering, but your mind doesn't get a chance to rest. And when the mind isn't cared for, it will seek ways to protect itself. One of those ways is to shut down your emotions. Emptiness, in many cases, isn't a sign you're losing connection with your child, it's a sign you're losing connection with yourself. When all the energy is drained outward, nothing is left for the inner self. Not because you're unworthy, but because no one says you need to keep a part of yourself. Another cause comes from the pressure to be okay. Postpartum women are often praised for their resilience, for not complaining, for getting over it quickly. But those very compliments inadvertently push them into a dangerous pattern. The quieter they are, the stronger they are seen as. You learn to swallow your emotions, not because you don't want to share, but because you don't want to become a burden. Every time you try to express your exhaustion, a voice in your head whispers, "No, maybe someone else is suffering more." And emotions pile up, with no escape, until they are no longer clearly felt. Emptiness also stems from invisible isolation. You may not be alone. There are still people in the house. Messages still arrive, but no one truly asks what you're going through. No one has the patience to sit and listen to vague, unclear feelings without a clear explanation. And you gradually stop talking, because you don't know where to begin. Furthermore, there are very real changes in the body. Fluctuating hormones, prolonged sleep deprivation, disrupted circadian rhythms. But the dank thing is, these biological factors are rarely placed in a human context. People say, it's just hormones, and expect you to overcome it on your own. In reality, your body and emotions are always tied to your environment and the support you have, or don't have. Most importantly, emptiness isn't a sign you're getting weaker. It's a sign you've suffered too long without support. When there isn't enough safe space to be sad, tired, or unwell, the mind chooses to close some doors. Not to make you disappear, but so you can continue to exist. If you're wondering why you feel empty, the answer isn't that you did something wrong. It's that you've done too much, in silence, for too long. And the moment you start asking this question, that's the first moment of recovery. Night is when the truth is revealed. During the day, everything follows its rhythm. You wake up because of responsibilities. You move because you have work to do. Your body and mind are kept in a state of being busy. And that busyness helps you avoid facing too many emotions at once. But night is different. Night doesn't demand that you be strong. Night doesn't require you to fulfill any role. Night simply is there. When the lights dim, when the house is silent, when no one calls your name anymore, the daytime defenses begin to loosen. Not because you are weaker at night, but because you have nothing left to distract you. That's when the truth is revealed. Not the noisy truth. Not the dramatic thoughts. It's a feeling so hard to name. You feel present, but not truly, within yourself. It's as if you've gone through the day by inertia, and only realize at night that you've left your emotions somewhere far away. There are nights like that for mothers. No tears, no panic, just a long silence, where you sit and ask yourself, when did I become like this? During the day, you can believe you're okay, because you still manage to do everything. But night isn't judged by performance. Night doesn't care how many tasks you've completed. Night only reflects what remains when all roles are laid down. And often, what remains is an unspoken exhaustion. Many postpartum women share that they only truly feel not okay at night. Not because night is scarier, but because during the day they have no right to stop. Night is a rare moment when they are not needed. And it is this lack of need that reveals a deeper emptiness. If no one needs them, then who are they? This question doesn't appear in their minds as a clear word. It comes as a feeling, a slight unease, An emptiness in the chest. A fleeting thought that vanishes. If I disappear now, surely everything will continue. It's important to clarify that such thoughts are not desires. They are signals of exhaustion, appearing when you've been in a state of self-sacrifice for too long without being seen. Night is also when the body speaks. When you're no longer straining, the fatigue accumulated during the day begins to spread. Tension in the shoulders, heaviness in the chest, shallow breathing. The body and mind, having worked tirelessly, finally have the space to express what they've been enduring. So, if night is when you find yourself feeling more empty, it doesn't mean you're going backward. It could simply be the first time of day you're quiet enough to recognize the truth. The truth that you're exhausted. The truth that you've pushed yourself harder than others see. The truth that you need rest, not just physically, but emotionally. Night doesn't come to weaken you. Night comes to remind you that there are parts of you that have been neglected for too long. And if you're in such nights, know this. The fact that you recognize this, sit with it, and don't run away, is already a very courageous act. Why postpartum women rarely talk about emptiness. Postpartum emptiness is rarely discussed, not because it doesn't exist, but because there's no familiar language for it. People easily talk about fatigue, sadness, and stress. But emptiness is different. It's vague, elusive, and often leaves even the person experiencing it unsure of what they're feeling. When people can't name an emotion, they tend to remain silent. Many postpartum women try to express this feeling, but then stop midway. They fear being misunderstood. They fear that if they express the emptiness, others will think they don't love their child, or worse, think they're complaining about something that should be happiness. Society often places very clear expectations on the image of a mother, gentle, grateful, and willing to sacrifice. In that picture, there's little room for imperfect emotions. There's no room for saying, I'm a mother, but I don't feel anything anymore. And women learn to remain silent. Another reason is the fear of becoming a burden. After childbirth, many women receive material support, help with childcare, comforting words, advice. But emotional support is different. It requires time, presence, and the ability to listen to things that don't have quick solutions. When they feel they're talking about things that are hard to hear, hard to understand, women often choose not to speak anymore. Not because they don't need to be listened to, but because they don't want to bother. Furthermore, there's the silent comparison. Others have it harder. At least I have a healthy child. At least I have my family. These statements aren't wrong, but when repeated enough times, these feelings become a reason to deny one's true emotions. The emptiness is placed against external measures, and always loses. So, it's pushed down, considered not worth talking about. Another factor is the lack of safety in expressing them. Not everyone has a quiet enough space to talk about negative, unpleasant feelings. There are families and relationships where expressing emptiness is immediately met with correction, advice, or negation. Think positively. It will pass. Don't overthink it. When emotions are pushed away before they are even heard, people learn to stop sharing. Most importantly, many postpartum women don't speak out because they think these feelings are their fault. They ask themselves, why do I feel this way when everything seems fine? When they can't find a clear reason, they turn to self-blame. And the emotions that come with shame are rarely shared. The emptiness thus becomes a very lonely experience. Not because there's no one around, but because no one knows where you really are inside. Sadly, the less it's talked about, the longer the emptiness tends to last. Not because it gets stronger, but because it's left untouched. And what's left untouched is hard to let go of. If you've never talked about your emptiness, it doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're living in a world unaccustomed to listening to silent emotions. And perhaps, hearing these words, is the first time someone has named something you've kept inside for so long. Call it by its name. You're not indifferent, you're depressed. There's a very common misconception that many postpartum women carry in silence. Maybe I'm becoming indifferent. When you no longer react strongly to things, when joy comes but goes unattainable, when you see your baby and know you should feel more, that thought is easy to come up. It makes you doubt yourself, doubt love, doubt motherhood. But the important thing to say, clearly and gently, is, you are not indifferent. You are depleted. Indifference is the inability to feel. Depletion is having used up all the energy to feel for a very long time without being replenished. After childbirth, many women have to open their hearts constantly. You feel for your baby. You react to every cry, every little movement. You put your attention outward almost constantly. When a person is kept in a state of always on standby for too long, the emotional system becomes fatigued. And when fatigued, it reduces its intensity of activity, not to make you cold, but to protect you from complete exhaustion. The numbness you feel isn't a sign of a lack of love. It's a sign of an overworked heart, a heart that hasn't had a proper rest since you became a mother. This is very different from how society usually talks about motherhood. People talk about overflowing love, about instant connection, about endless joy. But very rarely do they say that love also needs energy. And when energy is depleted, love doesn't disappear. It just no longer has the strength to express itself as before. Many women feel ashamed when they realize they are empty, because they have been taught that motherhood is about giving unconditionally. But no one can give continuously without needing to be recharged. That's not about ethics, but about very basic biology and psychology. Calling your state by its proper name is crucial. When you call it emotionlessness, you're condemning yourself. When you call it emptiness, you're opening the possibility of recovery. Because emptiness can be filled. Emotionlessness, on the other hand, sounds like a sentence. When you're empty, you don't need to be pressured to feel more. You don't need to be told to be grateful or try to be happy. Those words, though well-intentioned, often only make you feel like you haven't done enough. What you need is to be acknowledged that you've done a lot in silence. That your emotions are temporarily withdrawing not because you're wrong, but because you need a rest. Once you stop calling yourself emotionless, you can begin to listen to your body and mind in a different way. You'll notice the subtle signs. You need more sleep. You need someone to hold the baby so you can be alone for a few minutes. You need to speak up without being corrected. Recovery doesn't begin with loving your baby more. It begins with being kinder to yourself. If you're feeling drained, allow yourself to call it by its proper name. Not to complain, not to label, but to understand that this is a stopping point, not your true self. And from that stopping point, things can slowly begin to return. Stay with the empty space, don't deny it. When people realize they're feeling empty, their natural reaction is to want to escape that feeling as quickly as possible. They want to fill it. They want to be busier. They want to think more positively. They want to do something to avoid staying in that opening up void inside. But emptiness isn't an enemy to be defeated. It's a signal that's very quiet, very tiring, and very much needs to be stayed with. Staying with the emptiness doesn't mean you have to dig into sadness or try to understand everything immediately. It simply means not running away, not denying it, not blaming yourself, not forcing yourself to be okay when you're empty inside. For many postpartum women, this is the hardest thing. Because for a long time, they've been used to putting their emotions last. When they find themselves feeling empty, they quickly tell themselves, it's okay. It will pass. I don't have time for this. And they move on. But what is pushed away doesn't disappear. It just waits for a calmer moment to return, often at night. Staying with the emptiness is allowing yourself to stop without needing answers. It's sitting still for a few minutes without trying to make the feeling more pleasant. It's acknowledging, very gently, right now, I'm empty. Not to complain, but to stop pretending. You don't need to name every emotion inside. No need to analyze right and wrong. No need to know what the next step is. Recovery rarely begins with a plan. It begins with a moment when you stop fighting the state you're in. There are days when staying with the emptiness is simply sitting and breathing a little slower. Putting your hand on your chest. Feeling your heartbeat. Realize that, even though you feel empty, you're still alive. You're still present, and your body is still trying to support you. The important thing is, don't rush to make the emptiness a problem to fix. Because when you see it as a fault, you'll just keep forcing yourself. And that forcing yourself is what drained you in the first place. Staying with the emptiness also means allowing it to coexist with motherhood. You can care for your child while still feeling incomplete. Those two things don't negate each other. You don't need to wait until you're completely healed to be a good mother. Many women only begin to recover when they stop trying to escape this feeling. When they stop asking, how do I get rid of the emptiness? And start asking, what do I need when I'm empty? The answer is often very small. A little more rest, a quiet space undisturbed by advice. Someone can sit beside you without demanding an explanation. Emptiness isn't a place you're stuck in forever. It's like an intermediate room, a place where you pause after a long journey, before you have the strength to move on. If you rush out, you'll take your weariness with you. If you stay long enough, you'll begin to hear your true needs. And sometimes, simply by not denying it, the emptiness begins to change shape. The turning point. When you stop pretending to be okay. The turning point in your recovery journey rarely comes as a sudden burst of energy. It's not like an awakening, nor is it like a resolve to change everything from tomorrow. For many postpartum women, the turning point comes very subtly, so subtly that if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. It's when you no longer have the strength to pretend to be okay. Not because you've given up, but because pretending has taken too much energy. Perhaps it's a morning when you no longer answer the question, "Are you okay?" with your old habit. You don't say, "I'm fine," or offer lengthy explanations. You just stay silent, or reply, "I'm tired." A small statement, but so different from before. It could also be when you stop trying to appear happy when there's nothing to be happy about inside. You don't force yourself to smile. You don't force yourself to react in the right way. You allow your face to be neutral. Neither beautiful nor ugly, just real. This shift doesn't bring immediate relief. In fact, it might feel empty at first. Because when you're no longer pretending, those voids become more apparent. But it's there that something important begins to happen. You stop denying your own experiences. For a long time, you've had to maintain the image of being okay, so that everything around you would run smoothly. So that no one would worry. So that no one would be disappointed. So that you wouldn't disrupt the rhythm of your family life. Letting go of that image, even just a little, requires a great deal of courage. Because when you stop pretending to be okay, you confront the fear. If I'm not okay, will I still be accepted? If I'm weak, will I still be a good enough mother? The subtle shift doesn't answer those questions immediately. It just whispers something else. You don't need to prove you're okay to deserve to be here. When you allow yourself to be okay, you also begin to recognize very real needs that you've previously ignored. You realize you need rest, not just a reorganization of your time. You need to be listened to, not just given advice. You need to be alone for a while, without feeling guilty. This shift doesn't transform you into a different person. It just brings you closer to yourself. With your real breath, with your real feelings, with your real boundaries. Many women worry that if they stop pretending to be okay, everything will fall apart. But often the opposite happens. When you're no longer pouring energy into maintaining an image, you have a little more strength to truly take care of yourself, even if it's a little, even if it's very slow. Maybe you start saying something small. "I'm not so okay today." Perhaps you allow yourself to cry, or not cry, without judgment. Perhaps you put down your phone earlier, not to go straight to sleep, but to avoid absorbing anything more. These changes aren't noisy. No one applauds. No one calls it great progress. But they mark a very important step. You stop living two lives, an external life and an internal life. The turning point isn't when things get easy. It's when you stop making things difficult for yourself. And from that moment, the path to recovery can truly begin. Conclusion: if you feel empty tonight, stay a little longer with yourself. No need to try to fill it. No need to force yourself to understand anything. Just be there. In the quiet room, in the slow breath, in the very real feeling of the present moment. You don't need tears to prove that you're struggling. Emptiness is also a way for the body and mind to say, "I've come a long way without rest." If you don't feel anything distinct tonight, It doesn't mean you've lost the ability to feel. It just means you need to recover at a different pace, slower, less noisy, and kinder to yourself. You don't need to become better immediately. You don't need to become stronger. You don't need to love everything completely again. Just be here, as long as you're still breathing. As long as you don't turn your back on your experience. You might still feel empty tomorrow. You might still feel tired. But recovery rarely comes from a moment of brilliance. It comes from nights like this, when you stop blaming yourself, stop pretending, and allow yourself to be human before any other role. If no one has ever told you this, let this video say it for you. You're not broken. You're not lost, and you're not alone in this feeling. Tonight, that's all that matters.